Technology implementations don't fail because of technology. They fail because of people. And right now, you're probably about to make the same mistake everybody makes. You're going to spend millions of dollars on software and $50,000 on getting humans to actually use it. That's not a budget, that's a prayer. And when the project crashes, when adoption stalls, when productivity tanks, when your staff quietly goes back to spreadsheets, you won't be able to buy your way out. The damage will already be done. Let me tell you what change management actually is, because most people get it wrong. Change management is not training. Training is one small piece. Change management is not communication. Sending emails about your project is not change management. Change management is not a phase at the end of the project where you prepare people for go live. Organizational change management, OCM, is the discipline of moving people from their current state to a future state. It's understanding the human psychology of change. It's building organizational readiness. It's creating the conditions where adoption can actually happen. There's a reason the research consistently shows that projects with excellent change management are 6 times more likely to meet objectives than those with poor change management or none. 6 times. That's not a marginal improvement. That's the difference between success and failure. And yet, and this is the insane part, most government technology projects treat change management as an afterthought. A line item someone adds because they heard it was important. A few training sessions and some emails. That's like building a house and treating the foundation as optional. The frameworks exist. The methodologies are proven. Prosci has been refining this for decades. The ADKAR model, I'll tell you more about that later, gives you a clear roadmap for individual change. But most organizations either don't know about them or don't take them seriously. Now, let me show you what this looks like when it fails and when it works. First story. A county implemented a new ERP system, a $4.5 million project, 18-month timeline. They did everything right on the technical side. Great vendor, solid implementation partner, third-party PMO, reasonable scope, and the change management budget was $75,000, less than 2% of the project. So here's what that bought them. A change management lead who was actually a communications coordinator. Her job was to write newsletter updates and schedule training sessions. No OCM certification, no methodology, no framework. A stakeholder analysis that consisted of listing department heads on a spreadsheet. No assessment of their influence, their readiness, their concerns, just names. Training was scheduled for 2 weeks before go live. Generic, vendor provided, one size fits all. No executive sponsorship plan, no executive alignment. The county administrator gave a speech at kickoff saying, "I support this project," then disappeared. Never mentioned it again until problems started. There was no resistance management, so when department heads pushed back, the project team either ignored them or escalated to IT leadership, who, by the way, had no authority over these resisting departments. There was no reinforcement plan, no thought given to what happens after go live to sustain the change. So when go live arrived, within the first week, the assessor's office announced they wouldn't be using the new system for property tax calculations, a module they had bought and implemented. They had found issues and would continue using their spreadsheet until the issues were resolved. The issues were never clearly defined. They just didn't want to change. The Public Works Department struggled so badly that productivity dropped by half. Crews weren't getting dispatched. Work orders were lost. The director went to the county administrator directly, furious. "This system is crippling my operation." Finance managed to limp along, but staff were working nights and weekends to compensate for the learning curve. So obviously, the morale collapsed. By month 3, a full audit was underway. The project was labeled troubled. Additional budget was allocated to remediation. Real change management this time was finally brought in. So it took another 18 months and another $800,000 to achieve what they should have had at go live. Let me diagnose what actually went wrong using the ADKAR model. ADKAR. ADKAR is Prosci's framework for individual change. It stands for A. Awareness of the need for change. D. Desire to participate and support the change. K. Knowledge of how to change. A. Ability to implement the change. And R. Reinforcement to sustain the change. These happen in sequence. You cannot skip steps. And here's the critical insight. Most projects fail at awareness and desire long before you ever get to training. So at this county, awareness was almost non-existent. Staff knew a new system was coming. They didn't know why. They didn't understand what was wrong with the current system. They didn't see the need. From their perspective, things worked fine. Why change? I like my spreadsheets. It works. Without awareness, you can't build desire. And if you don't understand why we need to change, why would I want to change? Desire was never addressed. Nobody asked staff what their concerns were. Nobody explains what was in it for them. Nobody engaged the informal leaders who shape how others feel about change. Now think about this. The county administrator and their executive staff may be new, the directors may be new, but the organization itself has been around for a long, long time. So there's informal leadership. So the assessor's office didn't resist because they couldn't use a new system. They resisted because they didn't want to. They resisted because they didn't want to change. They had no desire. And without desire, they simply didn't do it. And in most counties, the assessor's office is an elected office. So think about what that means. They can dig in and not move, and no one can make them. So knowledge was the only thing that the project addressed through training. But training people who lack awareness and desire is almost worthless. They're sitting in class thinking, I don't understand why we're doing this. I don't want to do this. They're not learning. They're waiting for it to be over. They're waiting for leadership change. Ability requires practice and support. The county provided almost no support. So when people struggled, help wasn't available. They couldn't develop ability because the environment didn't support it. Reinforcement didn't exist, no recognition for adoption, no consequences for resistance, no sustained attention from leadership. The message was, this isn't actually important. The project addressed knowledge barely and ignored the other 4 elements, and that's why it failed. Not because the technology was bad. It never is, because change was never managed. Now here's a different agency that did it right. Similar size, similar scope, implementing a new financial and HR system. But this time, they brought in a certified Prosci practitioner to lead change management, a dedicated role. Now you can get this on staff, you can get this through your consulting team, but you need a dedicated role with a real methodology. And they had a proper budget. 12% of the project, about $400,000 on a $3.3 million implementation. Let me walk you through what that looked like using the Prosci 3-phase process: prepare, manage, reinforce. Phase 1, prepare. Before implementation even started, the change management lead did 3 things. First, they defined the change. Not we're implementing new software. She defined specifically what was changing for each stakeholder group. For AP clerks, their invoice processing workflow was changing. The approval routing was different. The system looked different. Their daily experience would be fundamentally altered. For department heads, their budget visibility would change. Their approval process would change. Their ability to run ad hoc reports would change. For IT, their support model would change. Their access and administration responsibilities would change. Each group had a different change to handle. Each needed a different approach. Second, identified sponsors and built a sponsor coalition. You might call it a steering committee, a guiding team, whatever. In the Prosci methodology, sponsors aren't cheerleaders. They're the leaders who authorize, legitimize, and reinforce the change. You need them at multiple levels. If you want to learn more about the different levels within an ERP implementation, click on this video. The city manager was the primary sponsor, but he couldn't personally sponsor the change for every department. So she built a coalition. Each department head became a sponsor for their area, not optional. If you're a department head, sponsoring change for your team is part of your job. She met with each sponsor individually, explained their role, gave them a sponsor roadmap, specific activities, specific timing. Here's what effective sponsorship looks like. Here's what you need to do in month 3, month 6 at go live. Third, she conducted stakeholder analysis and readiness assessments. She mapped every affected group, not just who they were, their current state, their change history, their likely resistance points, their influencers. The purchasing department had been burned by a failed system change 5 years earlier, so they'd be skeptical, obviously. She flagged that. The finance team was eager. They hated the current system. They'd be early adopters, so she planned to leverage that. The long tenured supervisors had the most to lose. They had built expertise in the old system. The new system made them beginners again. She identified them and planned for extra support. This wasn't a spreadsheet that got filed away. It was a living tool that guided decisions throughout the project. Phase 2, manage. So during implementation, change management ran in parallel with the technical work. You're building awareness, not here's our new system. Instead, here's why we need to change. It's a fundamental shift in how the organization is going to do business now. So here's why we need to change. She told the story of the problems. Month-end closing taking 15 plus days, reports that required 3 systems to produce, duplicate data entry causing errors, manual workarounds that only Linda knew, and Linda was retiring. She made the case for change specific and real. People could see themselves in the problems. Building desire. Next was building desire. This is where projects mostly fail. You can't create desire by telling people to want the change. You create it by engaging with their concerns, addressing what's in it for them, and involving them in shaping the change. She ran focus groups with each department, not information sessions, listening sessions. What worries you about this change? What would make this easier? What do you need? Some concerns were addressable, like we're worried we won't be able to run our weekly report. Let's make sure that report is available from day one. We'll prioritize it. Some concerns weren't flexible but needed acknowledgement. I've spent 15 years learning this system, this existing system. Now I have to start over. That's real. That's hard. You'll have support. And your deep knowledge of the business processes, that's still valuable. The system is changing, your expertise isn't, and we need it. She identified informal influencers, not just managers, but the respected people others look to, and made them change champions. Extra access, early training, a role in shaping the implementation. When those influencers said, I think this is going to be okay, others believed them. Building knowledge and ability. Next was building knowledge and ability. Training was role-based and just in time, but more importantly, it was designed for people who had awareness and desire, because staff understood why they were changing and wanted it to work. Training actually stuck. They were learning, not enduring. They were excited to learn. So she also planned for the ability gap, the period after training where people know what to do but can't do it smoothly yet. So extra support, floor walkers, super users, rapid response when people got stuck. All of that needs to happen. Phase 3 is reinforcing. This is where projects fall apart even when they've done everything else right. Go live is not the end. It's the beginning of reinforcement. So she built mechanisms to sustain the change. Recognition, celebrating wins. Departments that adopted well got acknowledged. Individuals who helped others got thanked publicly. Corrective action. Corrective action was taken when people reverted to old behaviors, using spreadsheets instead of the system. And sponsors had conversations, not punitive, but clear. This is the new way. And feedback loops, regular check-ins on what's working, what's not. And there were feedback loops, regular check-ins, what's working, what's not working. And adjustments were made based on real experience. And the leadership, and what was also needed was leadership attention. The city manager mentioned the new system in monthly updates, asked about it in department meetings, demonstrated that he still cared. So the reinforcement continued for 6 months after go live, not as a project phase, as a leadership practice. The whole organization adopted these things. So what were the results? Go live happened on schedule. Productivity dipped about 10% for the first month, then recovered. And adoption across all departments within 8 weeks. User satisfaction at 6 months was 84%. The month-end close that used to take 15 days was down to 6. The difference wasn't the technology. The difference was treating change as something that happens to people and managing it accordingly. The difference wasn't the software or the technology. The difference was treating change as something that happens to people, treating people like people, and managing the change accordingly throughout the process. Now, let me give you the framework so you can apply this yourself. Prosci is the most widely used change management methodology in the world. It's built on research from thousands of organizations over decades. And the core insight is that organizational change happens one person at a time. You can't change an organization without changing the individuals in it. And individuals change through a predictable process. And if you want to learn more about change management and how to apply OCM, click on this video. Prosci gives you 3 main tools. And by the way, you can bring in Prosci themselves to do the training, or you can hire a consultant or a third party that has this training and certification. So the three main tools are: one is the ADKAR model for individual change. Two, the PCT model, the Prosci change triangle for organizational change. Three is the three-phase process for managing change activities. So what is ADKAR? It's the individual journey. Every person going through change moves through these stages: awareness, understanding why the change is needed, not what is changing, why. Without awareness, people don't engage. This is true in life in general, right? They don't pay attention. They assume this will pass. So to build awareness, you need to communicate the business reasons for change. Make it relevant to their world. Help them see the gap between current state and needed state. And then the desire is a personal choice to support and participate in change. Desire is emotional. It's about what's in it for me and what's the risk of not changing. And do I trust the people leading this? You can't enforce desire. Like in the rest of life, you just can't. You can only create the conditions where desire can develop by engaging, listening, addressing concerns, and building trust. And this is where most projects fail. They skip from awareness straight to knowledge, training people who don't want to learn, and going straight to knowledge. And knowledge is understanding how to change, what to do, how to do it. This is where training fits. But notice, it's step 3, not step 1. Training without awareness and desire is almost useless. And then the ability is the demonstrated capability to implement the change. Knowledge is knowing what to do. Ability is being able to do it. There's a gap between them. And the practice period is the learning curve. Ability requires time, support, and a safe environment to fail and try again. Then comes reinforcement, which is the mechanisms that sustain change over time. Without reinforcement, people revert to old behaviors. The gravitational pull, this is the way we've always done it, is very strong. And we've all felt it in our daily lives. Reinforcement includes recognition, accountability, feedback, and sustained leadership attention, not just throughout the project, but after it ends. So the next tool in the Prosci model is the PCT model, the organizational picture. The PCT model, the Prosci change triangle, shows that successful change requires 3 elements: leadership, sponsorship at the top, active, visible sponsors who authorize and enforce the change, and then project management, which is the technical work of building and implementing the solution. And then change management is on the other side, the people work of moving individuals through ADKAR. Now, most projects have strong project management. They build the thing. If you want to learn more about how to set up a great PMO, click on this video. Most projects tend to have weak leadership. Leaders announce support and then disappear. Most projects have almost no change management. Nobody is managing the people side. You need all 3. Triangle for a reason. Remove any leg and the whole thing collapses. It needs to be a equilateral triangle. Change any leg and now it's not an equilateral triangle. So you need to think about all the aspects in conjunction and in relation to each other. So what's the sponsor role? I want to spend a minute on sponsorship because it's the most overlooked factor. An effective sponsor does 3 things. Prosci calls them the ABCs: active and visible participation. Not one speech at active and visible participation. Not one speech at kickoff. Ongoing visible engagement. Attending meetings, asking about progress, showing the organization this matters and why it matters. They also build a coalition. That's the B. Building a coalition. The primary sponsor can't reach everyone. They need sponsors at multiple levels. A cascade of sponsorship down and across the organization, communicating directly. People want to hear from their leaders, not just the project team. When the department head says, "This is important and I am committed to it," that carries weight that a project email doesn't. Poor sponsorship is the number 1 contributor to project failure. Number 1, above everything else. When sponsors are absent, lukewarm, or inconsistent, projects fail. Now, this is why change management isn't just a project team activity. It's a leadership activity. If your executives think their job is to approve the project and then watch from the sidelines, you have a problem. So here's the thing. Real change management requires real investment. The benchmark is 10 to 15% of the project budget for change management activities, which includes dedicated change management leads, internal or external, but ideally certified, stakeholder analysis and engagement activities, communication development and delivery, training design and delivery, coaching for sponsors, reinforcement activities. If you're spending less than 10%, you're under-resourced. You're hoping the change will manage itself. It won't. If 10 to 15% sounds like a lot, consider the alternative. A multi-million-dollar system that nobody uses effectively. Resistance that drags on for months. Workarounds that undermine data quality. Leadership credibility is damaged, having to spend more later on remediation. The change management budget isn't overhead. It's what makes your technical investment actually work. This is as important as having an independent PMO. So, what are the common failures? And let me name the patterns I see repeatedly. Treating change management as communication only. Emails and newsletters are not change management. They're one tool within one element of the framework. If your change manager is really a communications coordinator, you don't have change management. Skipping awareness and desire, jumping straight to training, and training people who don't understand why they're changing and don't want to change, it doesn't really work. They'll sit through training and go back to their old ways. And then you have absent sponsors, leaders who announce support once and then disappear. I know you're busy, but this is the most important thing you'll probably be doing. Sponsorship requires sustained, visible, active participation, not one speech, ongoing engagement. And then sometimes there's no reinforcement plan. Assuming go live is the end, people revert when there's no reinforcement. You need 6 months at least of active reinforcement at a minimum. And keep in mind, there is no one size fits all. The senior director who's been there 20 years needs different engagement than the new hire. The department that was burned by a previous failed system needs different trust building than the eager early adopters. Different stakeholders need different approaches. And starting too late is also a problem, right? Change management begins before the project kicked off. If you're thinking about it during implementation, you're behind. If you're thinking about it at go live, you've already failed. Here's what I need you to do. Look at your current or upcoming tech project. Look at your current or upcoming technology project. And it doesn't just apply to software project. Ask, do we have dedicated change management resources? A person whose job is OCM, not a project manager doing it on the side. Are we using a methodology, Prosci ADKAR or something equivalent, or are we winging it? Have we addressed our sponsors? Have we assessed our sponsors? Are they active, visible, building coalitions, communicating directly, or did they give one speech and then disappear? What's our change management budget? Is it 10 to 15% of project cost? Or is it a rounding error? If you don't like the answers, you have a choice. Invest now in proper change management or invest later in remediation. The second option is more expensive and more painful. Tell me in the comments, what's your experience with organizational change management? What's worked? What's failed? Have you used Prosci or ADKAR? Thank you for watching. Projects succeed or fail based on adoption. Adoption is a people problem, and people problems require people solutions, structured, proven, resourced approaches to moving individuals through change. The methodology exists, the research is clear. The only question is whether you'll take it seriously. If you want to go deeper, specifically on why people resist change and how to identify and address resistance, watch this video.